elders that I carried Poppy inside without waking her up. She looked so small wrapped in bandages. I sat in the chair next to the bed with all the paperwork spread out on my lap. There were custody forms and court dates and counseling referrals. The advocate had given me a folder an inch thick with resources and phone numbers. Everything felt overwhelming, but at least Poppy was safe now. She woke up after an hour asking where we were. I explained this was my place and she'd be staying here for a while. She asked if the boys could find us, and I promised her they couldn't come here. Ginny had made that very clear with the no contact order. The next morning, I called the number Ginny gave me for the court hearing and found out it was set for 3 days later. I spent those days getting Poppy settled in my apartment, moving my work stuff to make room for her things, and trying to keep her mind off everything.
It's beans and burgers.
And we had to wait 2 hours before our case got called. The judge looked at all the evidence Ginny presented, the video from Poppy's phone, the photos of her injuries, the bank records showing the stolen money. She ordered the boys to stay away from Poppy completely. No contact at all, not even the also said they had to stay in their bed while CPS did their investigation into the home. David sat there with his head down while his wife kept wiping her eyes. Told me what happened with the boys. The older one wouldn't talk to me.
Beans and burgers.
Glaring at everybody. The younger one broke down crying and admitted everything they'd done to Poppy and other kids at the school. The intake officer said they were looking at possible diversion programs if the boys showed they were really sorry and willing to change. That afternoon, I took Poppy to the store to buy a safe for all the important papers and backup copies of her evidence. It cost more than I wanted to spend, but after everything that happened, I needed to know her proof was secure. She picked the combination herself, using numbers that meant something to her, the date her parents died, and her mom's birthday. I started calling therapists from the list Ginny gave us, but every single one had a 6-week wait for regular appointments. Finally, one office said they had a crisis counselor who could see Poppy twice right away to help her.
Beans and burgers.
I booked both sessions immediately, even though I knew 2 sessions wouldn't be enough for what she'd been through. 5 days after Christmas, I woke up to find Grandma gone from her room. I had to leave Poppy in my neighbor while I drove around looking for her. I found her at a bus stop 3 miles away, trying to get to church to donate money for poor families, even though she didn't have any money with her. The stress from everything was making her confusion worse, and she didn't recognize me at first. I spent hours that week researching memory care places, but everything had wait lists months long and cost more than our whole family could afford. David should have been helping with this, but he was dealing with lawyer bills for the boys now. Grandma needed professional help, but there was no way to pay for it. 2 weeks later, we had the preliminary juvenile hearing. The prosecutor laid out a diversion program where the boys would have to pay back the money they stole, go to counseling, and do community service. If they completed everything successfully, they wouldn't get formal charges on their record. Part of me wanted them punished harder, but I knew Poppy needed stability more than revenge. The prosecutor explained the problem with restitution, though. The boys had spent all the stolen money on those expensive presents that Poppy gave away for free on Christmas morning. Ginny shows up and suddenly everyone's following protocol. David's wife finding those phone searches feels awfully convenient timing for someone who claims she didn't know. I'm curious why the bank needs the right hint to call it theft when they have a confused elderly victim. There was no way to get that money back, and the boys didn't have any way to pay it. The prosecutor suggested they could work part-time jobs and pay it back slowly over the next year. I told him I'd agree to the diversion program, but only if the protective orders stayed in place the whole time, and Poppy's safety was guaranteed. The judge agreed and added that the boys had to stay in counseling for at least 6 months. It felt like letting them off easy, but I had to focus on helping Poppy heal, not on punishing them. That same week, I had to deal with my job situation. I submitted all the paperwork from CPS and the court to my employer asking for leave. They gave me 1 month unpaid, which was both a relief and terrifying, since my savings would drain fast with 2 people to support now. I accepted it anyway, because Poppy needed me there. Over the next few weeks, things settled into a routine. Poppy went to her 2 crisis counseling sessions, which helped a little bit. The counselor taught her some breathing exercises for when she had nightmares about the boys coming after her. I kept calling the therapy waitlist every day, hoping for cancellations. Meanwhile, David and his wife were dealing with their own problems. The CPS investigation was ongoing, and they had to do parenting classes and home visits. The boys were staying with David's sister, who called me once to complain about how difficult they were being. I told her that wasn't my problem anymore. Grandma had 2 more wandering episodes that month. Once the police found her trying to walk to her old house from 40 years ago. Another time she was at the grocery store putting random items in her cart, thinking she was shopping for a church fundraiser. Each time made it clearer she couldn't stay at home much longer, but we still couldn't afford proper care. The diversion program started for the boys in February. They had to report to a probation officer every week and show proof they were looking for jobs. The older one got hired at a fast food place, but got fired after 3 days for arguing with his manager. The younger one lasted 2 weeks at a grocery store before quitting. The probation officer warned them they had to stick with jobs or face real charges. David got the court order for parenting classes and anger management the same week. He called me complaining about having to drive 40 minutes each way to the only approved program in our area. His wife told me later he showed up to the first class 20 minutes late and sat in the back row with his arms crossed. The instructor made him wait at least he went there. The anger management sessions were worse because they met twice a week and cost $200 each time. He tried to get out of them by saying he couldn't afford it, but the judge said he could sell his boat if money was that tight. 2 weeks after everything went down, the school counselor called about meeting with Poppy. He had this calm way of talking that made Poppy actually open up. Instead of pushing some big forgiveness plan like the last therapist tried, she just focused on small stuff. Could Poppy handle being in the cafeteria again? Would she feel safe?
Beans and burgers.
We made a list together of what would help Poppy feel ready to go back. No rush timeline, no pressure to make nice with anyone. Just practical steps like having a buddy system and knowing she could call me anytime. Poppy seemed lighter after that meeting, like someone finally got it. Ginny came by my apartment the next week to talk about what happened. happens next. We sat at my kitchen table going
These
through all
beans
the
and burgers.
She explained there were programs that could help with money if I became Poppy's permanent guardian. The state would give me $600 a month for her expenses, plus help with her therapy bills. We agreed to check in again in a month when things settled down more. The idea of raising Poppy full-time felt huge, but also like it didn't make any sense. She mentioned the boy's parents would probably fight it, but the court would look at what's best for Poppy, not what the family wants. 3 days later, David's wife texted me a picture of a receipt. The boys had made their first payment toward the money they stole from Grandma. $50 from the older one's McDonald's check and $20 from the younger one's paper route. She wanted me to know they were facing real consequences and learning to pay back what they took. I saved the picture but didn't reply. At this rate, it would take them years to pay back the full $2,000, but at least it was something. The court made them put half of everything they earned toward paying Grandma back. That night, I sat on my couch with Poppy asleep next to me, her head on my shoulder. I grabbed a notebook and started writing down what I could actually control in all this mess. Keep Poppy safe was number 1. Show up to all the appointments was 2. Take things one day at a time was 3. The family was broken, money was tight, and nothing was wrapped up neat and clean. But Poppy was here, breathing steady against my arm, finally getting some real sleep for the first time in weeks. That had to be enough for now. Well, folks, that's our time for today. Thanks for letting me throw in my 2 cents while we went through this story. Catch you in the next one. If you made it to